Everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. I am always delighted when people are willing to come back. So, returning for a second talk on this episode is writer David Booher. Thank you, David, for jumping in, joining, and talking with me for a few minutes.
Sure, it was only a little bit of kicking and screaming to get me back in here, so I think we're
Absolutely.
good.
Absolutely. There was a ghost trap, as I recall. You sort of fell into it,
Some,
and then I just pulled you in. I think is how that worked. Is that what is there an official name for that thing that they slide out, the ghost trap? I think I used to have
it's a
one.
ghost trap.
I
It's called a
thought
ghost
so.
trap.
I
Hmm.
thought so. Yeah, I was like, there's some other name, but no, it's the Ghost Trap. And of course, the reason I reference that is because you're currently writing Ghostbusters, or you did write, and now it's being released, Ghostbusters Back in Town. So if I had rights, I would sing the song right now, but I don't have the rights to that, unfortunately.
I'll let it slide. I'll let
Thank
it
you.
slide.
Thank you.
I won't tell anybody. Yeah, so I just, the way comics work is my part of the creation process, writing the scripts has been finished, but
Hmm.
we have not seen the final product until I'm not sure when exactly this is going to air, but it comes out at the end of March. Last week in March is issue number one.
Yeah, yeah. Very excited to see it out in the world and to see how the script comes to life in the visuals.
It's fun. It's fun. Blue Delaquanti, or
Yeah.
I've seen Blue's name written down many many times, but have not heard it spoken aloud yet. So forgive me, Blue. But Blue is wonderful and has brought this fantastic sort of uh, cartoonish feel to it, but not in the cartoon style of the original the Ghostbusters cartoon, the real Ghostbusters cartoon from the 80s and 90s, or
Hmm.
Extreme Ghostbusters from the late 90s. So it's kind of this unique iteration. I was talking about this a little bit with somebody else, and it's kind of like it exists now.
Yeah,
All these
yeah.
Ghostbusters projects have their own sort of life, right? And so the comic, even though it's tied into the movie, it's going to have its own identity,
Hmm.
sort of standing apart from everything else that's out there.
I love that, and I love Blue's work as well. I first discovered their work in Across a Field of Starlight, I think is the title,
Mhm.
and went and did kind of a back search through all of those things. And I think you are correct. I think it's Delaquanti. I think that's right.
Go stick that landing, stick that
That's right.
landing.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So you've also written in the world of D&D, Rain, Specs. Curious as by means of a recap, if folks out there haven't seen our first chat, anything that you'd like to share about sort of why comics? What is it about this space and this way of creating that's connected with you?
I used to say, I don't know if I said this on the last time I was on here because I used this anecdote quite a bit, but for those folks who are just joining us, I used to say when I first started making comics and sort of reading comics, I used to say that I came late to comics because I didn't read comics as a kid. I only started reading sort of the single issue Wednesday Warrior episodic comics as an adult. But I
Hmm.
realized that was wrong for two reasons. One, it suggests that there is some right or correct time to come to comics, and I don't think that's right. You
Yeah,
can come to
yeah.
comics when you're 18, 38, or 88, and you're not late. You are here, and you are welcome. And the other reason it was wrong is because when I was a kid, I did read comics. I didn't read Marvel and DC and superheroes and all that, but I read Far Side. I had a
Hmm.
subscription to Mad Magazine. I read Calvin and Hobbes and the Sunday Funnies. I used to use that silly putty. I don't know if you remember, but
Yeah. Hmm.
for all of you out there who are of a slightly younger set, it was pink silly putty. It was like a clay almost
Hmm.
um, that came in an egg. And when you flattened it out and put it onto a newspaper, I probably have to explain what a newspaper is
Yes.
um, these days. But you put it onto comics and you press it down, and when you pull it up, the silly putty has lifted the ink and the pictures and the art
Yeah.
backwards from the newspaper. So I used to do that. So it's not that as an adult I came to comics because I had comics all my life, and it's just fun for me to think of um, to think that in the grand tree of comics that Calvin and Hobbes and Watchmen,
Yes.
they sort of share the same comic ancestry and the same DNA. So that's when I started reading single issue comics or comics in sort of the adult stories in the comic format. Um, I was taken aback by what was possible because I didn't understand what comics were until I started reading them.
Hmm.
And so it was probably 15 years ago now that I came to them. And I read Lock and Key by Joe Hill and Gabe Rodriguez. And
Hmm.
that's what sort of such a pun, such a dad joke, but it's
Right.
what unlocked my understanding of comic books
Well played.
because
Yes.
I didn't know that that kind of story could be told in this format or it could be told so well as they did it. So that kind of broadened my horizons, and from there, inspired me to take this beautiful, wonderful masterpiece of comic and go, I could do that.
Uh-huh.
And I've
Absolutely.
been trying ever since.
I had not thought about the silly putty kind of like copy thing in a way, which I guess the big thing was that you could copy it and then kind of stretch it out and make your own like different kind of thing. I'm tempted to insert here that that's how we used to make photocopies, children. That's not actually it at all. That's not it at all. Not it at all. Um, so
The
so some
first ever silly putty was brought to you by Xerox.
That's right. That's right. It would get jammed all the time. That's crazy. Um, so curious about as somebody that writes in comics, and there's a spookiness to Ghostbusters. It scared me when I was a kid. I'm not gonna lie. The ghost in the library, I was terrified. There's a spookiness there. There's a comedy there as well. I'm curious about the things that you keep in mind as you're crafting something that's aiming to be scary in a way, and you know that you're working with the comic space to do that.
I think so. For Ghostbusters is so unique for me. I was such a fan when I was a kid. I watched my Ghostbusters entry point was Ghostbusters 2 with Vigo the Carpathian and the
Same.
pink slime under New York. That was sort of because I think that was 1989 and I was 10 years old. So
Hmm.
that was kind of like that's where my head was at. And I watched the first movie after that. I watched Ghostbusters 2 every time it was on cable. I just would watch it. I watched the real Ghostbusters, the cartoon,
Hmm.
growing up. I ate the Ghostbusters cereal. I distinctly remember that we got it, and I ate Ghostbusters cereal. Um, I think the ghosts were the marshmallows,
That's right. That's
and
right.
the filler, the crushed up newspaper was I think the I ain't afraid to know symbol.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, But anyway, so I'm a big Ghostbusters fan, and working on this comic, and especially talking to folks now that it's done and it's coming out, it's been crystallizing for me more and more that Ghostbusters is sort of unique in that it balances humor and horror in a
Hmm.
way that is very challenging. I don't know if I've seen it done in other franchises where it can be genuinely scary and also genuinely funny.
Hmm.
It's either, if you're Shaun of the Dead, it's not ever really genuinely scary because it's always just really funny, right? And it's not the other way, which is like Saw or Hostel, where it's never funny because it's always terrifying and you're losing limbs and stuff.
Yeah.
So Ghostbusters balances that, and for me as a writer, it's kind of sort of an emotional rhythm. So you can scare people, but you got to release that tension. You got to release that suspense. And usually it's Bill Murray. Um,
Hmm.
it's usually Venkman saying something funny or, incisive or biting. Now we have a new crew, and it's
Yes.
usually Gary or Phoebe, and even Callie sometimes, and Trevor. Also, all of them in their own way can infuse a very tense situation, either intense or ghost intense or monster creature intense, with that moment of levity that lets the audience take a breath and move on to the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. And I love thinking through the way that works. And the first person that I thought about when thinking about that humor element was, of course, Bill Murray and
Yeah.
Venkman, and just that deadpan, like, well, he's sort of the commentary, like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 person that's in the film instead of just watching it. So love that.
There's
And
a there's a moment in the trailer. I urge everybody to go watch the trailer for Frozen Empire.
mhm.
And it embodies the perfect balance of humor and horror. Um, when the big bad, you sort of see the hint of the big bad come out.
Uh-huh,
And
uh-huh.
all, Callie and Trevor and Phoebe and Gary are all on that rooftop or somewhere. And they're all watching it. And Gary goes, oh, ho, ho.
Uh-huh.
Like, oh, look at this. And you're supposed to be scared, but then you get that moment where you have permission to sort of be like, this is also kind of cool.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And that's the genius of Paul Rudd right there too, as well, and how the story comes together.
yeah,
Um,
just his timing is wonderful. So in the comic, I definitely got the opportunity to write some really fun jokes for Phoebe and Gary to just
nice.
sort of play off of each other. My favorite line in all of Afterlife, the
Hmm.
first Ghostbusters Afterlife, was when um, Phoebe, Gary's talking about the seismic activity, and Phoebe goes, "Well, did you set three sensors?" And he goes, "Yes, I know how many sides a triangle has." And she goes, "Oh, I just thought you were being obtuse."
Right. Yes, absolutely,
I think she
absolutely.
winks right after that. It's so
Uh-huh.
good.
Yeah, yeah. Um, love the humor, love it, and I'm glad the story is continuing. As somebody that I think Ghostbusters 2 was my first foray into that as well, and of course the Firehouse playset became like the go-to space for every set of toys after that, regardless of if they were Ghostbusters or not. Just a great set as well. So it's a visual story in film and comics. I'm curious about how comics have kind of allowed you to tell the story that you want to tell with these characters and get some of that humor and some of that fear on the page.
It's this debate is actually happening as we speak on Twitter about sort of visual storytelling
Uh-huh.
and sort of the mix between it's not film, it's not TV, where you're just a passive, observer, and
Hmm.
it's not prose where you are the act, you're actively reading, envisioning what's happening in your head. It's kind of in a mix of both. So when I'm writing, I put my just a little bit of my director hat on
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
figure out what what visually would work. And it's an interesting challenge to sort of not be too in the weeds on it because the folks that I'm working with, Blue and the other artists, they are all experts. They're professionals at what they do. And the more space that I can give them, the more exciting surprises that I see coming back.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I have a vision of what it should be, and I try to describe it in a way that allows that additional creativity to creep in there. So every once in a while, I'll call out um, like camera angles in a
Yeah.
panel or something because I want specifically like it needs to be a reverse because you're on one character and then you have to reverse on the other character because you got to see the reaction because that's the joke or that's the punchline, whatever.
Hmm.
I might call that out, but that's less about this is what we need, and it's more about let me try to convey to you what I'm trying to do or what I'm thinking about,
Yeah.
and then you take that and you interpret it the way that you think is best.
Hmm. Hmm.
So basically, the bottom line is I just try to stay out of the way. Put a few words on the page, and then try to stay out of the way to let all the professionals do their magic with it.
So, such a humble and generous collaborator you are.
I know because every time I try to get in the way, they're like, push me over. We'll take care of this. Nah, it's been great. Um, to every artist that I've worked with has been so collaborative and so
Mhm.
wonderful, and it's when the whole team buys into the vision of what you think. a comic can be, that's when it really becomes something even more than what you're hoping for.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what great pair ups to have your creative vision with the script, but then to have Blue Delaquanti, Zoe Thorogood, Skylar Patridge. I mean, a lot of wonderful talent and collection there of storytellers.
Absolutely. And again, it's like with Zoe, I just was like, you just you just let Zoe do her thing because she's gonna do it and it's gonna be amazing. So you just
Mm-hmm.
let Zoe do her thing. Like on Kanto, my all ages series, that's with Dark Horse now. Drew and I
Mm-hmm.
talk every single day and we exchange material constantly. So it's a constant back and forth as the comic is being formed. And that produces, I think, the best version of what Kanto can be,
Yeah,
having that open line of communication between the two of us.
that's cool.
Sometimes
Yeah.
we sometimes we butt heads, but we always work it out. It's always for the greater good, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's part of the joy of collaborating too, is working through the storytelling methods and all of the things. I'm sure. I'm sure. Um, And Kanto, also a wonderful series that draws in fantasy and just kind of shows you've got these horror elements, but you also do a variety of types of stories in comics.
Yeah, I pursue the stories that I love,
Mhm.
that I want to see in comics, that I want to read in comics, and the ones that I want to tell. So I loved Ghostbusters, as we talked about. That's why when they asked if I wanted to do Ghostbusters, I said absolutely. I loved I love Firefly, and I got to do that one. I love Dungeons. I'm not a big Dungeons and Dragons guy, but when they said, "Oh, it's based on the characters from the cartoon series from the '80s,"
Mhm.
I about fell over because I loved the cartoon. I loved it as a kid.
Yeah.
So D&D may not have been something that fit with what I wanted to do, but when it was the cartoon, I had such a deep love for it that it was such a it's been a joy to be able to write that series. Same
Mhm.
thing with Canto and Specs and Rain. Rain came about because I read Joe Hill. It's based on a novella by Joe Hill, and I read
Mhm.
it. And I remember the moment I was like in bed reading for the night, and I was reading this, and I went, I really think this would be wonderful visualized,
Yeah.
whether that's a movie, TV show. And they thought, well, what about a comic? Let's do a comic. And through some folks, Chris Ryle is the editor on Rain, and he really shepherded that from start to finish.
Mhm.
But he's connected with Joe through their work together on Lock and Key. Um, and I was connected to Chris through IDW. He was there when Kanto came into IDW. And so that's the way things worked because I was passionate about the story. I reached out and I was like, let's see if we can do this. And Joe very graciously said, what could go wrong? No, he didn't say that. He said, sure, let's give it a shot. Let's do this. And, it worked out.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I love the story of like collaboration, support, and also the fact that you're constantly reading things right before bed because that's my sweet spot too. Although with Joe Hill stories and Stephen King stories and things like that, sometimes it's maybe not the best time to read the stories, but that has its own unique experience and power too.
It's
So
that comfort of Schadenfreude.
that's
Somebody
right.
might be getting ripped apart in the book, but you're in your nice, warm, soft bed.
That's right.
Nothing could happen to you.
Exactly. Exactly. And then you drift into sleep and you're like, why did I dream that crazy dream?
The tentacles start coming up from under the bed.
That's right. That's right.
You're you're ours now.
Yes, yes. We got some Lovecraft influences working here too, I believe. I believe that's right. So I typically ask about next steps in the creative journey. I typically ask about anything that you'd like to mention along those lines. I know we have Ghostbusters coming at the end of March and on, but anything else that you'd like to mention that you can mention, and
Sure.
as well as web spaces and things like that.
Sure. So Dungeons and Dragons Volume 2, Saturday Morning Adventures Volume 2 is currently coming out in single issues. I believe the collection is going to be out in the fall. I don't remember what month. Killer Queens 2, the collected edition, is coming out in May from Dark Horse. Ghostbusters is going to be 4 issue series coming out starting in March, so that'll go all the way to June.
Mhm.
And then, if you thought you were rid of me, Kanto is coming out in June, the last story arc of what we're calling the Shrouded Man saga. So up till now, we've done 23 issues. We have 6 more issues. We're going to wrap up this big 29 issue story arc
Mhm.
from Dark Horse. In addition, Dark Horse is printing for the first time in hardcover all of the Kanto volumes starting
Nice.
in starting in June. So you can pre-order them right now. There's 4 volumes. They're gonna be beautiful hardcovers with new back material and just melt your face design. And then we'll finish off the Kanto Shrouded Man saga by the end of the year. And then who knows what happens after that.
I'm thinking you probably have an idea. I'm thinking there might already be a script for it. I'm thinking maybe.
For what?
Whatever that happens to be.
We'll see. There's a couple of things percolating that I'm super excited about, sort of focusing on the creator owned
Nice,
angle of
nice,
things.
nice.
There's some original stuff.
Well, looking forward to where the tentacle grab in the evening read takes you next, and looking forward
I
to all of the
literally,
things.
it's so funny because I was literally, before I got on this, I was looking at some artwork samples from an artist, and it was all such Lovecraftian Cthulhu, just beauty
Yeah.
in the chaos. And that's like, my brain is now just a pile of writhing tentacles.
Nice, nice. That's a good place to be creatively,
I
I'm
think
sure.
so.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
so. You never know what's going to bubble up from the abyss.
that's right. Well, did we miss anything in the talk through before we close out? I hope I tailored the questions in a Ghostbusters way and caught the spirit of it there. See what I did there, Ghost and Spirit. Any see
Oh my
anything else?
God. I love that we end there. There's nothing that's going to top that.
That's it.
Um,
That's it.
yeah, yeah. Just folks can find me on the social medias. I'm most active on Instagram at David M. Booher. I do a lot of streaming on Whatnot. So if you are on Whatnot or if you're not on Whatnot, come on over because every time a new comic comes out that I have, I go on and live stream and you can get signed copies and who knows what kind of crazy 80s cartoon comics that I can come up with. We had Strawberry Shortcake #1 on from Star
Nice,
Comics
nice.
last week. That's my jam.
Yes, I love
Star
what you did there.
Comics.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I didn't even mean to do.
It's just gonna keep rolling now. It's just gonna keep rolling. That's what it is.
Strawberry Shortcake is my jam. All right,
That's right.
we're done
That's right.
here.
I think that topped my Ghost and Spirit comment. There's something about our conversations that always leads to this too. I think this happened at the end of our first conversation where the humor just started coming in. But it's great. I'm a high school English teacher, so now I have lots of jokes to take back with me tomorrow. So it
Oh
works
my
well.
God. If you please let me know if you use the jam.
I absolutely will. I absolutely will. And I usually have my cell phone handy and I'll play like a clip of canned laughter after just to like really let it sink in, you know.
I
Um,
need that.
just the audio file. Um, well, on that note, David, thank you so much for a wonderful chat and glad to have you back anytime. Always looking forward to the things you're creating as well.
Thank you for having me on once again, and you will not be able to get rid of me.
Sounds great. Sounds great. I look forward to it.
Thanks.